Hello everyone, it's Old Guardian here. Another balance patch for constructed Hearthstone is on the way. It has been announced in the most official Blizzard source, which is Twitter, on their personal Twitter accounts, yeah. So Aleco tweeted yesterday that we're going to be making some standard balance adjustments soon. Next patch will likely be more nerf focused than the previous one and might include some neutral cards. We'll be locking in our changes this Friday, and the patch will go live roughly 1 week after that. Blizzard typically likes to do patches on Tuesdays and Thursdays, so the way I read this would be that this will come next week on Thursday, probably. Could be Tuesday if we're lucky, but Thursday is the more likely date. Okay, so that's all we have, all the official info, but after I saw this tweet, I really started to think about, okay, what would I like to see in the balance patch? What would we need from a balance patch? So let's take a bit of a tour into the current meta and what I think might be coming in this patch. First of all, this meta does not really have a meta tyrant. Looking at the win rates of various classes and various archetypes, note that Warrior is not included here, but Warrior doesn't have any decks that reach 50%. This is not like trying to be a comprehensive look at everything about the meta. This is more like looking at the bird's eye view, the big picture of what's going on and what would need to change. So like Aggro Druid 54% win rate, right, that's pretty high, but it's nothing super strong. Then we have Quest Hunter at 53, we have Big Spell Mage at 53, Miracle Rogue is actually below 52, Imp Warlock is around 52. So the decks that are the good part of the meta, the decks that are really fighting for dominance in this meta game, there are several competitors and none of them have a very clear edge. So it's more like a rock, paper, scissors style meta than a meta where there would be just somebody who's really dominating. On the other hand, we have classes like Demon Hunter, we have classes like Paladin looking really bad, and then we have class like Warrior, also looking pretty bad. Also, Rogue, for example, it's only Miracle Rogue. Before this meta, we used to have that meta where there were 6 viable classes, so Rogue was below 50% as well, although Miracle Rogue was already then being refined and it was rising. And now, it's good, but it's not super strong. So how do you fix a meta like this with nerfs when there are not that many really obvious targets? And it's a very rock, paper, scissors style meta, so you nerf one piece and that means that other pieces become dominant, so bit of difficult position. And in some ways the difficulty also continues within the deck archetypes. So looking inside these various archetypes, most of the strong decks at the moment have one super strong card that is really carrying the deck. Like Aggro Druid has Herald of Nature, like Ramp Druid has Wild Heart Guff. I mean, Wild Heart Guff, look at that. Mulligan win rate 65, Drone win rate 64, 4 percentage points ahead of the second best card in the deck, which is Castle Nathria. Then we have like Spooky Mage, Magister Dawngrasp, again 4 percentage points above Mortar's Fire Eye. And then we have Big Spell Mage with Belinda Stoneheart. Most of these decks have just that one really super strong card. And even looking at some of the little bit weaker decks, like Control Shaman, Castle Nathria is carrying Control Shaman now that Snowfall Guardian has been nerfed. Then we have Face Hunter, Wild Spirits really carrying Face Hunter. Without Wild Spirits, is there even a Face Hunter deck left, for example? And then we have that Miracle Rogue with the buffed Edwin. And yeah, Edwin buff had an effect. Edwin was already a strong card, now Edwin is the best card in the deck. It's even better than the Wild Boar Null. But Null is still pretty good, so there's still much competition because the location is good, Draga is good. Miracle Rogue is actually one of the most balanced decks internally, meaning that Miracle Rogue has multiple cards that together make the deck, instead of relying on a single card. And other decks that rely on multiple cards, there's Imp Warlock. Imp Warlock, the Wild Library used to be an outlier, but after its nerf, it's just one other card in Imp Warlock. Then we have like Beast Hunter. Sure, Beast Hunter has some strong cards like Krakatoa and Altimo, but they're not really outliers. And then we have Quest Hunter. Well, the Quest Hunter wouldn't exist without the quest, of course, but once you already have the quest, everything else is pretty equal, so there's no single outlier cards in those decks. So obviously we could nerf the outlier cards of the strongest decks, but then some of the stronger decks don't have such an outlier card. But that might not be a problem depending on what are the good matchups and what are the bad matchups of each. Starting with that Aggro Druid, where Herald of Nature is clearly the strongest card in the deck, but Aggro Druid, I don't think Aggro Druid needs to be nerfed, because Aggro Druid has a lot of weaknesses. Weaknesses to decks like Enraged Warriors, Aggro Demon Hunters, Phylactery Warlocks. Aggro Druid has a lot of weaknesses, but all of those decks are being oppressed by the other strong decks in the meta. So if some of the other strong decks in the meta are nerfed, then Aggro Druid naturally becomes weaker, because those decks that were driven out of the meta by the other powerful decks become more viable, and then they can challenge Aggro Druid again. Mage decks, on the other hand, Magister Dawngrasp is starting to become a problem. It's very strong in Spooky Mage, of course. It's even strong in Big Spell Mage, although Big Spell Mage has that Belinda. So Dawngrasp, it just becomes so inevitable. With the Arcane Burst, then it ramps up, and that hero power just ends games. So one option to limit the power of Mage is to limit the endgame lethality of Dawngrasps, for example, by reducing the scaling of Arcane Burst. As for Big Spell Mage, Dawngrasp nerf might already be enough, but if it isn't, then of course you could add 1 mana cost to Belinda, because that would mean also that the spells that Belinda draws would not be so cheap, so that would limit the power of Big Spell Mage. And then we have the problem with Ramp Druid, and Ramp Druid is really a problem because Ramp Druid, there have been lots of nerfs at various points to Ramp cards. But typically, like, they can lower the win rate, but the deck still remains popular and they can still make many moments that feel really bad. They can just blow everyone out of the water when they get their ramp anyway. So, will Ramp Druid always be hit or miss? Is it like a fundamental design flaw in the archetype? It's kind of hard to say, but one way to limit it would be to make Guff a little bit slower. Guff to 6 mana, for example, which would mean that more aggressive decks would be able to defeat Druid, and that would make Druid less viable on the ladder. As for Miracle Rogue, if we're lowering the power level of other top decks, then we probably have to lower the power level of Miracle Rogue as well, and Edwin revert back to this 4 mana version. That seems like the easy way to handle Miracle Rogue. Some of the other decks were not so dependent on a single card like Imp Warlock, Beast Hunter. Those shouldn't be too much of a problem even in their current state, but what could be a problem is Quest Hunter, because Quest Hunter can be a little bit more polarizing and that can result in undesirable metagames. And you can't really hurt Quest Hunter by hurting any of the individual cards, but you could hurt it by increasing the requirements in Defend the Dwarven District, a classic way that the Warlock quest was also nerfed many times. And that leaves us with Aleco's statement that some neutral cards might also be affected, and well, I can only think of 2 potential neutral cards, Theotar and Sire Denatrius. And if you nerf Theotar, you just can't nerf Theotar unless you nerf Sire Denatrius. Theotar is the answer to Sire Denatrius. So Denatrius is maybe a little bit too final. It's maybe a little bit too lethal, because it deals so much damage. So maybe Endlessly Infuse has to be changed into Endlessly Infuse 2 before it gains more damage. Then if Denatrius is nerfed, is there even a need to nerf Theotar anymore? Because Theotar seems to be kind of actually a healthy card for wild format. It's only the standard format where it's a problem, because standard format all the decks rely on like 1 super card. But if decks don't have that 1 super card anymore, then the importance of Theotar becomes weaker, and then we could still maintain Theotar for wild format, and everything would be fine maybe. Maybe. Although there still remains the question what to do about Paladin, Demon Hunter and Warrior. Like, how do you save these? Paladin already got a bunch of buffs, Demon Hunter got a bunch of buffs, Warrior got a bunch of buffs. All of them became better, but not really strong enough. Maybe it is enough to nerf just the strongest decks, and maybe that will give them enough room that they can breathe. Paladin, for example, is pretty strong against Hunters, so if Beast Hunter becomes one of the premium decks in the format, that naturally benefits Paladin. Demon Hunter is already close to 50%, Warrior is getting closer to 50%, maybe the nerfs will just make them more viable. Although the overall problem is this package-based design that Hearthstone has been doing over the past expansions. If your package sucks, then your entire class sucks, because you can only build a deck around your pre-designed package. And that also means that like there could be surprising problems if we nerfed Denatrius, because currently Control Shaman, the only viable Shaman deck, is built around Sire Denatrius. Sire Denatrius is now their only win condition basically. And if that goes, maybe Shaman goes, and the Shaman packages, the latest packages, Evolve, Totem Shaman, those are not great, so yeah, this whole package thing just, it's such a huge problem. There's such a large pool of cards for each class that are only going to be usable in these packages. And then if that package isn't good enough, then all of those cards are immediately out of the meta. And that leaves very few playable cards left. And in fact, if we are going to lower the lethality now, if we're going to lower that inescapable Castle Nathria's win condition, then we might just bring the packages from the old expansions back. What if we just bring Kazakhstan back? Because Kazakhstan isn't an option right now, because by the time you get to play Kazakhstan, Castle Nathria is going to come and kill you. It doesn't matter what you do with your Kazakhstan. What if Mech Paladin comes back? What if Mech Mage comes back? All of these packages from the last expansion, they're still there. And Mech Paladin, for example, is like 48-49%. It's not a terrible deck at the moment. It's just not quite good enough either. So all of those packages are just waiting, and Blizzard is only changing the meta by power creeping those packages, by making better packages, and then all of those are forgotten and they're left alone. But then if you end up doing nerfs, then maybe those just come back, and then we just have the meta from the previous expansion back. So yeah, there's quite a lot of problems with the way Hearthstone cards have been designed lately. And there have been talks about how this is a problem with the final design. The final design hasn't been able to balance the game. That's why Warrior is not good. That's why Paladin is not good. But final design's job has been made a lot harder by the initial design and the decision to go with all of these package-based designs. That problem is probably something that we're going to have to live with for quite some time now. I don't think a balanced patch can change that, but maybe if the balanced patch is made just right, perhaps we will see some Kazakhstan decks back, perhaps we will see some Mech Mages back, but perhaps they will coexist with the packages from the current expansion and there'll be lots of different archetypes in a healthy meta, like one can always hope. Thank you for watching. Click like and subscribe if you enjoyed this, and a special thanks to all of my Patreon supporters, YouTube members and Twitch subscribers who make all of these videos possible.